Before you continue with anything else today, I need you to pause for a moment, because what you are about to hear concerns you directly. You did not find this video found you. And somewhere inside, beneath all your doubts and all your questions, you already sense why. Something touched you yesterday. It may have arrived as a sudden heaviness in the middle of an ordinary task, a wave of sadness with no visible cause, or a tightness in your throat, while the rest of the world carried on as if nothing had happened. Perhaps their name crossed your mind with a force that startled you, or you felt watched in a room that was empty. I want you to understand something with complete clarity. That feeling was not a malfunction of your mind, not stress, and not your imagination punishing you. It was an arrival. Yesterday, a specific person thought of you with an intensity they have not allowed themselves since the two of you distanced. And they did not simply think of you. They collapsed inward around your memory. This person is in a very bad state because of you, not because you harmed them, but because their soul can no longer sustain the story that they are fine without you. Yesterday, that story died, and in the silence that followed, they felt you more strongly than ever before. But how can you be certain that what you felt belongs to them and not to you? It is a fair question, and the answer lies in the nature of deep bonds. When two souls have truly touched, they do not simply exchange words and memories. They tune themselves to one another, the way two instruments in the same room can be tuned to the same note. And here is what most people never learn. When two instruments share a frequency, you only need to strike one of them. The other will begin to hum on its own, untouched, across the distance. Nobody has to explain this to the instrument. It simply obeys the law of resonance. Yesterday, this person was struck. Life struck them with the full weight of your absence, and their inner world rang like a bell. What you felt, that unexplainable wave that moved through your chest, was your own soul humming in response. You were not imagining a connection. You were registering one. Now understand what actually happened on their side of the thread. For weeks, perhaps months, this person has been performing. They have been staging a play called I Have Moved On, rehearsing it for their friends, for their family, for their own reflection in the mirror. They laughed on cue, filled their schedule, and repeated the script of indifference until it almost sounded true. But a performance is not a life, and a mask is not a face. Maintaining that role demanded energy from a reserve that was already empty. And yesterday, at the height of that exhausting theater, the lights went out. Something small was enough. A place, a phrase, a stranger with your way of walking. The scenery fell, the costume tore, and this person stood alone in the dark with the one truth they had spent all this time refusing to face. You are not a chapter they finished. You are the story itself. That moment of collapse released everything they had been holding back, and the wave of it traveled straight down the invisible thread that ends in you. If you can look back at yesterday and recognize the exact moment that wave arrived, if some part of you knew, even before this video confirmed it, then write these words in the comments. I felt it too. Your testimony will become a light for every other soul walking through this same storm and doubting their own perception. Now your logical mind will ask the obvious question, and it deserves an answer. Why yesterday? Why not 3 weeks ago? Why not 3 months ago? Why did their breaking point choose that precise day? Pay attention, because this is the part almost everyone misunderstands. Their collapse was not random. It was the final line of a long, invisible arithmetic. Imagine a bowstring. Every day, this person spent pretending you did not matter. The string was drawn back 1 more centimeter. Every message they refused to send drew it further. Every night, they scrolled through old photographs and then locked the phone as if nothing happened. Further still, a bowstring can be held in tension for a remarkably long time, but not forever. The arm holding it trembles, then burns, then fails. Yesterday, their arm failed, and when a string held that long is finally released, it does not whisper. It snaps forward with the accumulated force of each day it was denied. But there is a second reason, and this one involves you directly. In recent days, something in your own energy changed, even if you did not do it on purpose. Perhaps you passed a stretch of hours in which you did not think about them at all. Perhaps, after months, you laughed with your whole chest or made a small decision that belonged to your future instead of your past. In that moment, you withdrew a current of attention that had been quietly feeding them since the separation. You must understand that even while ignoring you, they could feel you orbiting. Your longing reached them like the warmth of a fire in the next room, and that warmth allowed them to keep pretending, because some deep part of them believed you would always be there, waiting, available, theirs. When your attention turned back toward your own path, the temperature dropped, the fire in the next room went quiet, and their unconscious understood, with animal certainty, what their pride had refused to consider. They are actually losing you, not in words, but in reality. That realization did not arrive as a thought. It arrived as a sensation. Midway through an ordinary afternoon, surrounded by noise and people and obligations, this person felt the ground tilt. The conversation around them turned into a distant murmur. The food lost its taste. The room felt suddenly airless, and they could not have told anyone why. Their mind, that traitor that swore it had forgotten you, began an inventory it never authorized. The way you listened to them, the way your presence made rooms feel safe, the particular experience of being understood without explaining, which they have searched for in other faces since you, and found in none. One by one, the comparisons rose up, and one by one, everyone else on this earth lost. Nobody reaches me like you do. Nobody reads my silences, and nobody feels like home. That is the sentence their soul pronounced yesterday, and it fell on them like a verdict. Beneath all of it ran a colder current, the one that truly broke them, the certainty that time is not neutral. Every week of silence is another door closing by degrees. They felt, perhaps for the first time, that the story of you and them is not waiting patiently on a shelf where they left it. It is being decided right now, hour by wasted hour. And yesterday, they could no longer escape that knowledge. This is why the wave that reached you carried not only longing, but fear. You felt them more strongly than ever, because, at last, they were facing the true size of what they stand to lose. And yet, everything I have described so far happened in the invisible world, in the theater of their inner life. You may still wonder whether any of this is real enough to trust. So let us step out of the unseen for now, because what happened to this person yesterday did not stay in their thoughts. It descended into their body, and the body, unlike the mouth, does not know how to lie. If you could stand invisible inside this person's home right now, you would not need a single word of confession. The evidence is written on their body, and it is written in a language you would recognize instantly. It begins in the center of the chest. Since yesterday, this person carries a weight there, as if a small stone had been placed exactly where the ribs meet. It is not an illness, and it is not something a doctor could find. It is the physical address of everything unspoken. Every so often, halfway through some routine task, their breath catches on that stone, and they have to inhale deeply, the way a person breathes after crying, even though no tears have fallen. If someone asked, they would call it stress. You and I know its real name. Then there is the night, because darkness is where their discipline dies. This person can control their thoughts in daylight, surrounded by distractions and duties. But in the deepest hour of the night, usually between 3 and 4, their eyes open as if someone had quietly spoken their name into the dark room. The house is silent, and yet something in them is certain it was called, and in that defenseless hour, before the ego can put its armor back on, there is only one direction their mind knows how to walk: toward you. They replay old conversations and edit them with better endings. They compose messages they will never send, entire letters written on the ceiling above their bed, and when sleep finally takes them back, it betrays them too, because you have begun to appear in their dreams with a vividness that feels less like memory and more like visitation. More than once recently, this person has woken up disoriented, with the emotional residue of your presence all over them, and needed several seconds to accept that you were not actually there. Those seconds, I promise you, are the loneliest of their entire day. Their hands have their own symptoms. Watch how many times a day those hands reach for the phone without permission, unlock the screen, and hover. They have typed your name and erased it. Some nights, they have opened your old conversation simply to read what remains of you, scrolling upward into the past, like a diver descending into a sunken ship, searching for the exact moment the water came in. They have drafted a message, sometimes a long one, and then watched their own thumb press delete, because sending it would mean admitting everything. Every deleted message is a confession that never reached the courtroom, and there have been many. The body keeps testifying. Food has become an obligation rather than a pleasure. They eat because the hour says so, not because hunger asks. The morning coffee tastes like nothing in particular. A tiredness follows them that no amount of sleep repairs, because it is not produced by effort. It is produced by the war inside them, the most expensive conflict a human being can finance, the struggle between what they feel and what they show. People around them are noticing the casualties. Their laugh arrives half a second late. Their voice has lost a color it used to have. Mid-conversation, their attention drifts toward somewhere nobody else can see. More than one friend has asked if they are okay and received the smallest word in the language as an answer. Fine. The body disagrees, and it has been disagreeing loudly since yesterday. Then come the ghosts. When a bond runs this deep, the senses themselves become haunted. Yesterday, or the day before, this person turned their head sharply in a public place because they heard your laugh, your exact laugh, woven into the noise of a crowd. It was a stranger. For one merciless second, it was you. They have caught a trace of a familiar fragrance in a shop, in a hallway, and been thrown across time so violently that they had to stop walking. A song they never chose ambushed them from a speaker in a supermarket, and they stood there among the shelves, absolutely still, doing the bravest thing they have done all week, listening to it until the end. Their skin remembers you too. There are moments when the memory of your hand on their shoulder arrives with such fidelity that their body reacts as if the touch were happening now. Their eyes search for you in places you could not possibly be. This is not madness. It is the deepest part of them overriding the story the surface tells. A search party sent out by the soul against the direct orders of the ego. Now, I know how all of this sounds. A skeptic would call it coincidence, projection, wishful thinking. And if this were merely mystical talk, the skeptic might have a case. But what is happening between the two of you was observed, named, and explained more than a century ago by one of the greatest minds psychology has ever produced. And once you hear his explanation, you will never doubt your own perception again. We must speak of Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who dedicated his entire life to the hidden architecture of the human mind. He made a discovery so radical that the world is still catching up to it. Beneath our private thoughts and personal memories, he found, deeper than childhood, deeper than language, all human minds open into a shared depth. He called it the collective unconscious. Picture it like this. On the surface, you and this person are two separate wells, standing far apart in two different fields, walled off from one another. But every well, if you descend far enough, reaches the same underground river. The water in your well and the water in theirs rises from a single hidden current. That is why the separation you can see is not the truth of what is actually happening. Above ground, there is distance, silence, and unanswered questions. Below ground, the river never stopped flowing between you. Jung observed something else, a phenomenon he named synchronicity. He noticed that inner states and outer events sometimes align with a precision that chance cannot explain, as if the water below occasionally pushes a sign up to the surface. You have already lived this. You think of them, and within the hour, something carrying their fingerprint crosses your path. You dream of them, and the next day their name appears in a conversation that has nothing to do with them. Yesterday, while they were breaking, you were feeling it in your own chest, without any visible cause. Jung studied a lifetime of such moments, in his patients and in himself, and concluded that they are meaningful arrangements, the visible ripples of an invisible connection. The skeptic shrugs and calls it coincidence. Synchronicity is that shared depth reminding both of you that it exists. But the concept that explains this person's suffering most precisely is what Jung called projection, and it deserves every second of your attention. He taught that each of us carries within the unconscious an inner image of the soul itself, a living blueprint of what we most need and most lack. We walk through the world unaware of it, until one day we meet a real human being who fits it exactly, and the unconscious does something dramatic. It projects that image onto them, the way a film is projected onto a screen. From that moment, they are no longer just a person to us. They become the carrier of our soul's true face. Now consider what this means for you. You are that screen for them. Through you, they touched their own deepest layer, the layer they cannot reach alone. And this is exactly why they ran. Meeting you meant standing in front of a mirror that showed them everything. Their tenderness, their hunger for love, their fear of surrender, every unlived room of their heart. Some people hold that gaze and stay. This person flinched. But here is the trap he described with unforgiving clarity. You cannot run away from a mirror that lives inside you. When they distance themselves from you, they distance themselves from their own soul. The emptiness they feel is not only your absence, it is their absence from themselves. That is why nothing fills it. That is why no distraction, no new face, no crowded weekend has worked. They are not homesick for a person. They are homesick for who they were in your presence. And the old doctor left us one final law that explains yesterday perfectly, the law of compensation. The psyche, he taught, always seeks balance. Whatever the conscious mind suppresses, the unconscious returns with equal force, usually at night, usually in dreams, always without mercy. What you resist does not disappear. It persists and it grows. So observe the perfect mathematics of their situation. The harder this person works at forgetting you by day, the more powerfully you return by night. Their own effort against you has become the engine of your presence within them. Every wall they build, the river simply flows beneath it. They are not healing from you, they are compressing you. And compressed feelings do not fade. They concentrate. Yesterday was the day the pressure exceeded the container. Seen through his eyes, their breakdown was not weakness. It was the psyche restoring balance by force, the soul demanding to be heard after months of being silenced. Realize what this knowledge changes for you. Until today, you have been standing guard over a silent phone, allowing a small glass screen to decide whether the connection is real. Every notification that was not them took something from you. Every empty morning made you doubt what your soul kept insisting. That ends now. You do not need the visible world to confirm what the invisible world has already delivered. You felt them yesterday. They felt you more strongly than ever. The thread held, the river flows, and no silence above ground can cancel what moves beneath it. This is the moment you stop asking for proof and start recognizing it. And something else changes too. Knowing this, you no longer need to chase. Chasing was always the language of doubt, and you are no longer in doubt. Your task now is not to reach for them. It is to remain in the calm, rooted frequency you touched in recent days, the very frequency that shook them awake. Peace, it turns out, is not passive. Your peace is the loudest signal you have ever sent. When you sleep well, they feel it. When you reclaim your joy, it reaches them. When you stop orbiting them and return to the center of your own life, the deep river carries the news directly into their chest. You do not have to say a single word to be heard. You are being heard right now. Still, I know there is one question left standing between you and complete certainty. It is the question you have carried through this entire video, perhaps for weeks. It deserves a serious answer, not a slogan. If they are truly in such a bad state because of you, why have they not reached out? Let us answer it honestly, because false comfort would insult your intelligence. The silence is real. The phone does not ring, and your mind concludes, reasonably, that it means indifference. But listen carefully. In matters of the heart, silence is not a measurement of feeling. It is a measurement of fear. This person is not quiet because you mean too little. They are quiet because you mean too much, and they know it. Consider what one message would actually cost them. To write to you, they must first admit, to themselves before anyone else, that the performance failed, that they left, or let go, or let it break, and that it was a mistake. Pride can swallow many things, but it chokes on that one. And beneath the pride sits something even heavier: shame. This person remembers exactly how it ended. They have replayed their own words, their own coldness, their own exit, hundreds of times, and every replay ends with the same question. After everything that happened, what right do I have to return? They are not certain a message from them would be welcome. They imagine your eyes rolling at their name on your screen. They imagine you happier without them. And that image, which their fear paints in convincing detail, is precisely what keeps their hands still. So instead of reaching out, they patrol. Quietly, invisibly, they keep watch over your world. If a door into your life remains open to them, however small, they pass through it, in silence, and leave no footprints. They know more about your recent days than you would ever suspect, and every one of those secret visits costs them another piece of their composure. Their ego stands like a night watchman, marching back and forth before a castle, looking disciplined, looking strong. But step closer, and you will see the truth. The castle behind the watchman is empty, and the strength is ceremonial. The guard is all that is left. That is why I tell you, do not measure the depth of their feelings by the volume of their actions. A person can be screaming your name on the inside and still scroll past your life as if bored. The louder the inner storm, the tighter some souls grip their stillness, because they sense, and rightly so, that a single step in your direction would end all control. The first word to you would pull the rest out behind it, like a thread drawn from a sweater, until everything they have hidden lies in the open. Their silence is not a closed door, it is a held breath, and nobody, no matter how proud, can hold their breath forever. So let the events of yesterday settle into their true meaning. A wall inside this person has already cracked, and walls do not uncrack. The feelings they finally felt cannot be unfelt. From now on, every quiet evening will interrogate them, every song will take your side, and every attempt to replace you will only sharpen the comparison they keep losing. The current beneath is rising, and their resistance, although it looks solid, is thawing the way ice thaws on a great river at the end of winter, silently, invisibly, and then all at once. You cannot schedule the day the ice breaks, but you can trust the season. No winter in the history of winters has ever refused to end. A day is coming when the fear of losing you will finally outweigh the fear of facing you. On that day, all the unsent messages will gather themselves into one that is sent. It may begin small, a question that did not need asking, an excuse thin enough to see through. Do not be fooled by its size. Behind that small door will be standing everything you learned about tonight. The sleepless hours, the deleted confessions, the stone in the chest, the dreams they never told anyone about. Yesterday was not the end of their struggle. It was the beginning of their surrender. Until that day arrives, your only task is to remain who you have become. A soul that no longer begs for evidence, because it has learned to read the invisible. Stand in your peace and let the deep water do its patient work. You have read the signs correctly from the beginning. This person can run through all the distractions the world offers, and they will, but none of it changes anything. Because after every escape, every silence, and every proud mile in the opposite direction, each road they take still bends, quietly and against their will, back toward the only place their storm has ever gone quiet. And that place has always been you.